balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. We start off Independence Week. That's right. This Friday is Independence Day, the greatest day this world has ever seen. Well, aside from the first coming and eventually the second coming. But I'll be honest with you, I mean, I am an Independence Day kind of guy. And yes, it is Independence Day. It's not the 4th of July. The 4th of July is the date. Independence Day is the reason why we celebrate on the 4th of July. So it does irk me every once in a while when people call it the 4th. You know, what are you doing for the 4th? What are you doing on the 4th of July? What are you doing on Independence Day? Let's grab that language back from the left and let's use it properly. It is Independence Day, okay? There is no other, nothing else. It's Independence Day, period. So, there you go. Oh, all right. Well, the Senate has decided to put the big, beautiful bill, the one big, beautiful bill, which is no longer one big, beautiful bill. It's now a little bit smaller than what it was when it first got here. But which means that, of course, it's going to have to go back to the House, and the House is going to have to vote on it. And so, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of the situation in terms of all of that. But anyway, I got a little bit more on that here in a little bit. Also, too, had a couple of things occur with Canada that the left aren't liking at all. They, of course, they certainly aren't. But before we get all into that, let's go ahead and get the Pledge of Allegiance going. Tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance done by none other than our very own longtime Whiskey Warrior P1, Buddy Weiser. And so if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one like me, and place your hand over your heart and follow along with Buddy Weiser as he recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I hereby pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which she stands, one nation under one God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all her citizens. So help me God.
And I thank you, Buddy, for that wonderful rendition of the pledge. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself reciting or performing the pledge in your style, and then take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email. Send it off to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, let's go ahead and get tonight's headline sponsor going. And tonight's headline sponsor is none other than me. That's right. I am wearing one version of the American Perspective logo gear that you guys can go and get by heading off to store.americanperspective.online. That's store.americanperspective.online. And, I should probably have had that pulled up here. Let me go ahead and get that up. So let's see what we got here. Dun-da-da, dun-da-da-dun-da-da. Come on. There we go. All right. So let me go ahead and shift over to that. Oops, wrong monitor. There it is. Oh, yeah. Having me join the Whiskey Warrior P1 community. Oh, hang on. Jeez. Got me all the way out. It sometimes does that when it gets screwed up. There we go. All right. Now I've got it right. So take a look at these wonderful products. I've got crew neck sweatshirts. I've got t-shirts. You see, the one that I did is right here. The one that I'm wearing right now is this one right here in the corner. That's the alternate. That's logo 2, alternate colors for the logo. I've got logo 1, logo 2, and logo 3. Logo 1 is obviously got my standard stuff and all of that kind of thing. So, anyway, you can go and get t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, regular crew neck sweatshirts, tank tops. There's also the link for the Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution there. And then you can also go to the second page, and you can pick up, there's the link for the Old Whiskey Musings store, which is still live, as far as I'm aware. And then you can also pick up some drinkware and some other Racerback tees for the ladies right there. And all of this stuff, of course, comes with one of 3 different logos, whether it's logo 1, logo 2, logo 3, and you guys can go and take your choice of those and pick all of that up. But head on over to store.americanperspective.online. That's store.americanperspective.online, and go and pick something up for yourself today. That would be fantastic. And of course, I try not to charge you a lot. I really am trying to keep prices down. I only take a very small portion for the show. And of course, for anybody that's interested, the money that goes toward the show actually goes toward different things that I have to do. It doesn't go to me. It's not necessary. It's not like my income or anything. But I put it toward things like the phone number that I have, which I haven't used in a very long time. Probably should bring that back. And some other things like, web hosting and going to things like Rumble and paying for the Rumble connection and so on and so forth. So, but anyway, that's all coming from everything that you guys, send to me in terms of donations and that kind of stuff. So it basically pays for the show, for the most part. I mean, not really, but it pays as much as it can for the show, I should say. So anyway, go to store.americanperspective.online. That would be absolutely fantastic if you guys could go and pick something up for yourselves. And of course, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you guys do, because it is fantastic. Just to have such a loyal viewership is just fantastic for me. All right, some sad news in the docket tonight. Top shelf. There was a Idaho shooting incident, and apparently there was a gentleman who, they suspect, we don't know this for certain, but they suspect that he went and purposely started a fire and then shot the first responders that came to put out the fire. 2 firefighters were killed. A third was wounded. And according to the Associated Press, citing a law enforcement official, this gentleman deliberately set a brush fire on what's called Canfield Mountain near Coeur d'Alene yesterday to lure first responders into this deadly trap. And the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office said fire crews responded to a blaze at the Canfield Mountain just north of Coeur d'Alene at around 1:30 p.m. yesterday. Gunshots were reported about half an hour later. In audio from the scene, a firefighter said there was an emergency situation and that there was an active shooter at the fire. So they apparently had the caller, there was a caller in, a firefighter told a dispatcher that we need law enforcement up here immediately. 2 battalion chiefs were down. They took out a third Coeur d'Alene firefighter, 2 unresponsive battalion chiefs, multiple gunshot wounds. The guy on the radio said, "I'm pinned down." And then they also stated on the radio that the fire was intentionally set to draw us in. Anyway, so but my prayers go out, of course. Prayers go out to this individual, but anyway, apparently the suspected gunman was then tracked through the terrain up there, which it's pretty, mountainous, hilly kind of things. And using cell phone data, the tactical team located the shooter's body several hours later in a wooded area near the origin point of the fire. Firearm was found nearby, and they haven't confirmed yet whether or not he died by suicide or was fatally wounded during an exchange with authorities. Now, the names of the firefighters have not been publicly released, of course, pending notification of the next of kin. The third firefighter who was hit, who suffered critical injuries, underwent emergency surgery, and is in stable conditions at the moment. So, yeah. Our prayers go out to those lives lost, and of course to the others who were wounded. More information obviously will be presented more and more. But this horrible thing. I don't understand. I really don't understand the motivations of anybody that does that sort of thing, which is why it's very apparent, obviously, that whenever something like this does happen, it obviously is a mental illness kind of scenario. And that is one place that our government has sort of let these things down. So anyway. All right. Well, Trump and his admin have found during a second investigation by the Department of Health and Human Services that Harvard has violated civil rights. And because of this, and this is the civil rights that they have violated, is over alleged anti-Semitism. Just more than a week after Trump announced that he was close to resolving his differences with Harvard and reaching an agreement, the administration cited findings of a second probe into anti-Semitism and civil rights violations at the campus. HHS Office for Civil Rights said Monday that Harvard acted with deliberate indifference toward harassment of Jewish and Israeli students by other students and faculty starting in October 7th of 2023 through the present. Harvard's public pledges to improve its disciplinary framework for harassment and misconduct are inadequate to meaningfully address these serious findings, according to Paula Stannard, who is the agency's civil rights director. She said that in a statement today. So anyway, it's, yeah. So they're in violation of Title VII. So, again, these people, I just don't understand why it's not that hard. It really isn't. It's not that hard to figure out what is a violation, what is not. And yes, hate speech is one thing, but civil rights violations, that's a total other scenario here. You can stand there in a freaking Nazi uniform and, cuss and do say all kinds of things, bad things about, whatever. But to not protect your own students that are going there is just one step beyond. These people need to understand these institutions. They're kind of like working for a private company. If I, as a private individual, invoke or do something on the private property of my private company, and I start saying things and doing things that are essentially against the law, my butt would be fired. And yet, for some reason, at the university level, they seem to allow it. They seem to think that just because a student is there, that they get to violate the law. And it's been this way for a long time. I mean, don't get me wrong. This Berkeley UC Berkeley had serious problems where Ronald Reagan basically said that you people, meaning the teachers and instructors, were the adults who were supposed to be the adults in the room, and I'm paraphrasing now, but what gave the teachers the right to tell these young people what laws they can choose to follow or not? And that's the point, is that people, simple decency in society is gone at this point. And it's like, yeah, I'm just, this is just ridiculous, but hey, whatever. Trump has found it, and hopefully he's going to hold them accountable. And it's not just Harvard. It should be a lot of others too. I told you about how they were looking at Columbia University, I believe was the other one. Well, not too long ago, a couple episodes ago, I mentioned to you about Canada and how Canada had this massive digital services tax that they were putting on, and Trump was not happy about that. And so he basically told Canada, well, I'm not going to talk to you anymore about these trade talks. This occurred on June 27th. That Trump said, I am ending all trade negotiations with Canada over this ridiculous digital services tax. Well, Canada apparently FA'd, and they backed off and they said, we went a little too far. So the Canada government is now rescinding the digital services tax to avoid stalling the trade talks with the United States 2 days after President Trump announced that he would end negotiations. Yeah. Ottawa says that removing the tax will put Canada back on track to reach a trade deal with the United States by July 21st. They backed off. They tried to bluff the poker player, or the 4D chess player, whatever one you want to say. But anyway, so yeah. And now they have resumed, obviously, the trade negotiations with the Trump administration. So even though the leftists, when Trump announced this thing, the leftists were all like, oh my gosh, we're going to end all of our negotiations with Canada. Canada, our favorite country since sliced bread, is going away, because they wrap their arms around leftist ideologies often. But anyway, yeah. So once again, Trump has pulled a victory for that. Anyway, so the big beautiful bill has now made it to the floor of the Senate. Last week they were talking about, there was some problems. The Senate parliamentarian did some things, so on and so forth. And of course, the left is sitting there and talking about all kinds of things dealing with Medicaid, how 16 million people are going to be kicked off of Medicaid and Medicare, and blah, 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 blah. Of course, the sky is falling, Chicken Little kind of scenario that the leftists always do. Well, Senator Ted Budd from North Carolina. Senator Ted Budd is setting the record straight on the Democrat misinformation about Medicaid. And Sev.net, yes, the chat is working, but I'm not going to answer that question that you have, which has to deal what's my least favorite college. College major? Basket weaving, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Ted Budd, to get back to the story, Ted Budd is setting the record straight about the Democrat misinformation. He did a series of tweets on X, and basically he is setting the record straight. This was yesterday that he put it out there, and he goes, Senate Democrats continued to spread misinformation about the GOP's efforts to safeguard Medicaid. The senator said the facts aren't on their side. Nobody is cutting Medicaid. We are just making it sustainable for those it was originally intended for, which is exactly what is going on with all this. Medicaid, he says in a series of tweets on X that Medicaid is a critical program, but federal Medicaid spending has increased by more than 200% since 2008 and 51% since just 2019. And he says it costs the federal government way more to cover able-bodied adults added under Medicaid expansion than those traditionally enrolled. And he says through a budget gimmick, states have required medical providers to pay the state's fair share of Medicaid costs. Why do they agree to do this? Because the providers get this money back, often in spades. States leverage this to receive as much as 9-to-1 federal dollars. So he's claiming that states are basically attempting to avoid the bill, footing the bill, and is turning that on itself and going 9-to-1 to get their federal dollars in there. Now, one thing that he does point out is that Medicaid was intended to serve the following things: single mothers, disabled folks, children. And the federal government is required to cover a significantly lower portion of that cost, he says, compared to patients added to the program under the Medicaid expansion. He calls in his North Carolina state and says the federal government's share of the cost of traditional Medicaid recipients' care is 64%. But for an able-bodied adult recently added under Medicaid expansion, the federal government pays 90%. And meanwhile, more federal spending means higher taxes and even more debt. Now, he goes into a lot more other pieces of information about this whole thing. But again, I'm just going to throw this out there. Healthcare was not intended and was never intended to be a federal government constitutionally mandated responsibility. So, yeah. Anyway, what they are doing as a part of this one big beautiful bill is they are actually cutting out a lot of the able-bodied adults that are just basically just sitting on Medicare. They're requiring certain things to be certain thresholds to hit in terms of things like working a certain number of hours in order to receive benefits, so on and so forth. And so what they're attempting to do, obviously, is take off some of the fraud, waste, and abuse that is there for this. And he finishes with his whole thing saying, nobody is voting to take away Medicaid benefits from patients whom Medicaid was designed to serve, which is exactly what Democrats keep harping on and keep saying, oh, no, Medicaid, you're going to take it away from 16 million people. What they don't tell you is those 16 million people have the capability to go out and get a job and potentially get their own health insurance. So, yeah. Anyway, Senate Republicans are trying to slow the rate of the exponential cost increases for a program we all agree must survive for future generations. In other words, what Bud is attempting to say is that, hey, we need to start slowing this down because we're running it basically into the ground, which is what everybody agrees with. I mean, everybody knows that it's going insolvent. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these social programs are the biggest draw on the federal government, number one. And number two, they are also going insolvent because we don't have as many people that are backfilling into the programs that we have actually on the program, pulling from it. And that's an unfortunate, the way the whole thing was set up was that way. The idea, of course, was that, the retiring generation would be smaller than the working generations, And therefore, they would consistently be able to backfill whatever is being paid out for the retirement generation. The only problem is when the system was first put into place, they neglected to realize that medical advancements were going to make it so that people who retired, they retire at 65, and they're now living a lot longer than what was originally intended when the program was set up originally. So, not saying that that's a bad thing at all. Again, constitutional, situations set aside, this is essentially the, shall we say, kind of a Ponzi scheme in a way. Because what you're doing is you're robbing to pay out today's generation from, today's retirees, I should say, from today's generation. And unfortunately, that's not, that's not helping. That's not footing the bill anymore. It's not taking care of the bill. So this is a bit of a problem, and this is something that of course, eventually it's going to have to get handled. I personally believe, as much as it hurts to just go ahead and anybody who's currently on it obviously gets paid, but the rest of us who still have time to be able to attempt to recoup some of this, because we're going to lose it anyway. I mean, I already know that by the time I get to retirement, I'm probably not going to have hardly anything from Social Security, because it's basically going to be non-existent by the time I get to retirement. So I either have one of two choices. I either work for the rest of my life, which is a very real possibility, or I learn and try my best to invest and that kind of stuff. And my personal finance situation really isn't pertinent to the conversation, but the fact of the matter is that something drastic is going to have to happen. Otherwise, these programs are going to disappear in 2030, 2035. They're going to become unsustainable. And even if this is just a small drop in the bucket in comparison to all of the rest of them, even it's a start. And that's the one thing that the Democrats don't want, because, of course, the Democrats run every single time on the idea that, hey, we're going to hand you free stuff. That's what they always do. Free stuff. I'm sorry, but free stuff is not free. Somebody pays for it. Somebody somewhere pays for it. And, when you start adding things like adding people who are, for an example, illegal aliens here, that's a problem. When you start adding them to the roles, inadvertently or advertently, one or the other, it's still a problem. There's more money going out than there is coming in. And I don't know about you, but I know that we can't continue on that track, because sooner or later, there's not going to be any more money coming in. And that's the whole point of this particular situation. So the White House's rapid response account shared all of the Bud's messages and posted their own lengthy thread going through the myths and the facts about the one big, beautiful bill. So the Senate is supposed to have started a vote-a-rama on Monday morning that supposedly would last between 9 to 15 hours, according to Fox News' Chad Pergam, who noted that the final passage could come as early as this evening. Well, it's now 8:30, and I'm not 8:30 Eastern time, and I'm not exactly sure that was going to be the case. I haven't heard anything yet, although I know that my Whiskey Warrior P1s might find something about it. Well, one of the things, or at least one opponent of the big beautiful bill, is none other than Elon Musk. Elon Musk has said today that he will actively work toward ensuring that GOP lawmakers who vote to pass the one big beautiful bill, despite campaigning on promises to rein in government spending, will actually lose their primaries. Now, he is having a big heartache over a couple of different things. For an example, the idea of increasing the debt. And his unfortunately for Elon, he's looking at the U.S. government as being a business. And while it should be actually run like a business, as it currently stands, you kind of can't. You can't run it like a business. And so, unfortunately, he's looking at it as, hey, I can walk in and cut whatever I want. Well, there's laws and things like that that are preventing all of this from occurring, unfortunately. And so, yeah, it's just, it's going to be interesting. Musk posted on X saying every member of Congress who campaigned on reducing government spending, then immediately voted for the biggest debt increase in history should hang their head in shame. And they will lose their primary next year if it is the last thing I do on this earth. Anyway, so, yeah, so what actually is a part of the bill? Let's go. I'll go through that here in just a minute. But first, before we do that, let me tell you about Rumble Premium. So this sponsorship is from Rumble, one that is incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator, like me. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. We know this because Facebook itself admitted that they fell to the pressure from the Biden-Harris administration. Rumble, of course, did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media by governments like France. They are attacked by brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. All right? Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get very many that'll work with them. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you, but if you really believe in this fight, and if you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering a $10 off promotion with promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium. For those of you that don't know, the / is the question mark key. Rumble.com/premium. Use promo code STUDIO to get $10 off when you purchase an annual subscription. Once again, go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO to get $10 off when you purchase an annual subscription. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, or, you can't for whatever reason, we're just happy if you watch us on Rumble. All right. So what's in the Senate version of the big, beautiful bill? Well, let's go through it. The Epic Times actually has a pretty good piece on this. The first thing is that the 2017 tax cuts have been extended. That was a big, big deal, was to get the 2017 tax cuts put into place from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And unlike what the Democrats keep saying about tax cuts for billionaires, the tax cuts that are in the big, beautiful bill apply to everybody. It slashed marginal tax rates across the board, with most brackets seeing anywhere from a 2 to 4% cut. If these are not extended, then the tax rates will return to their pre-2017 levels at the end of fiscal year 2025 on September 30th. Okay? The child tax credit was boosted, so it goes from $2,000 to $2,200, as well as making it a permanent credit. Now, for those of us that don't have children, of course, that makes sense, but it doesn't do us any good. But it will for future generations, of course. In the Senate version is the reduced taxes on overtime, car loans, and tips. The bill is allowing to deduct the first $25,000 in income from tips, not ticks, but tips. Deducting up to $12,500 in income from overtime pay for single filers, or up to $25,000 for joint filers. And of course, deducting up to $10,000 for car loan interest on American-made vehicles. Now, there is a $6,000 Social Security deduction for seniors in there as well. Now, obviously, this isn't no taxes on Social Security, but it's, definitely giving you $6,000 of your Social Security income to deduct. With that amount reducing once, of course, your income passes $75,000 for single filers or $150,000 for joint filers. Does that sound like a thing? I mean, honestly, does that sound like a thing that's going to help a billionaire? No, it's not. It's helping the lower income into the middle income folks. Anyway, there's more funding for immigration and border security in it as well. There's also some funding into defense, which we need. Then it also is cutting out some clean energy tax credits. Now, this is another thing that a lot of people think that Elon is sort of pissed about, because several of these clean energy tax credits that were included in the Inflation Inducing Act, or the Inflation Reduction Act is what it was called, they're being cut beginning as early as this year. So electric vehicle tax credit would end on September 30th, and this is kind of why they think that Musk is being a little against this. But anyway, a couple of the other clean energy type projects, hydrogen, wind, and solar, would need to be online by December 31st of 2027 or January 1st, 2028, depending upon the type of project. And the bill would then tax new wind and solar projects for using specific foreign-made components. Now, the other one, obviously, is the Medicaid. We've already talked about that. It's seeking to reduce Medicaid spending by imposing an 80-hour monthly work requirement for all able-bodied adults to receive the program. And it's also going to reduce the provider tax, the rate at which states tax hospitals and doctors to pay for the Medicaid programs, from 6% to 3.5%. in states that actually expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. So they're cutting some of that stuff out that was part of Obamacare. 10 states that didn't expand their programs will actually see no changes. Now, I can guarantee you it's all mostly Democrats, probably the vast majority of Democrats that are Democrat-run states that expanded that crap. So now, to offset the fears that these changes would actually harm rural hospitals, the bill allocates $25 billion to support such small hospitals and sites. SNAP cuts are also in place for this within the big beautiful bill of the Senate's version. And this would, for the first time, require states to actually contribute to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is what SNAP stands for, commonly known as food stamps. The amount would be variable based on a state's payment error rate, but would fall between 5 and 15%. It would also increase states' share of administrative costs up to 75%, which is up from their current 50% rate. And then we have the $5 trillion debt ceiling increase. And this, of course, is what Elon Musk was really worried about, was the increasing of the debt ceiling. Again, not that I'm in favor of it, because I'm not, but I don't think that we would necessarily have the ability to work this through on a reconciliation bill. I think most of the cuts that Doge is looking for should actually be done under the actual under an actual budget bill, not a reconciliation, because there are rules that block things from being done. The SALT cap, which is the state and local tax deduction, which originally was capped at $10,000 in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, the Senate bill actually increases that to $40,000 annually, and increasing it by 1% for 5 years instead of the initial 10 years that was originally sought by the by the as part of a compromise in the House. So beginning in 2030, then the cap would then return to 10,000. So raising it to 40,000 is only a temporary kind of thing. And just for those of you that don't know, state and local taxes allows taxpayers to deduct a portion of their state and local taxes from their federal tax income. The program is controversial with conservatives who view it as favoring blue state taxpayers more than those in comparably low tax red states. And in a way, you kind of could see that. I mean, if you're in California or New York, for an example, where all of your state and local taxes are through the roof, and then you go someplace like Wyoming or Florida, where state and local taxes are relatively low, you would end up seeing a discrepancy in the benefit from somebody who actually lives in California and New York versus somebody who actually lives somewhere where they don't tax the crap out of you in your state and local policies. So, yeah. Let's see. Some education policies are looking to be tweaked. For an example, Pell Grant eligibility for high-income students and students with a full ride. It's going to reduce those, which realistically, if you can pay for the college, you shouldn't even be able to you shouldn't even be allowed to like get these be eligible for this stuff. But the one of the policies is to propose 2 federal student loan repayment plans, including one traditional and one income-based. Additionally, it would tax college and university endowments at a variable rate, either 1.4%, 4%, or 8% based on their wealth. There are some restrictions on regulating AI in it, which I don't understand where that, I honestly, I don't understand where that's a reconciliation. That just doesn't seem to make sense to me, but apparently it passes muster. So the parliamentarian ruled against many of the provisions made and said that they were ineligible for passage under the filibuster-proof process. I kind of told you about this, but the provisions that were cut, one included empowering states to enforce immigration law. They cut that out. They cut out multiple provisions relating to the federal workforce, and they cut out a provision to financially reward cost-cutting measures done by federal agencies. The proposal, Mike Lee's proposal to sell off federal lands, was left out. Another proposal to cut the $200 excise tax and regulations on silencers and certain types of firearms was ruled ineligible for reconciliation, so all of that's gone. The AI policy, by the way, so I'm answering my own question. So the AI policy wrapped into the final text was altered from an earlier version, which didn't make the prohibition on a condition of receiving broadband funding. So that was the difference that helped it to get back into play. Republicans also removed a measure that was dubbed the revenge tax that would have let Trump impose retribution taxes on foreign companies from nations that tax U.S. firms. And that was taken out because of the fact that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that after certain negotiations, the provision was no longer necessary. So the parliamentarian also rejected a pay cut for the Federal Reserve employees and a repeal of the programs authorized by the Biden-era Inflation Reduction Act. Again, that was taken out, but they did some other things with it, among other rulings that would have had to pass through the Senate chamber as regular bills. Lots of stuff going on there. Well, one of the things that, of course, everybody's been talking about is tariffs. And I mentioned this on Friday. This story actually ended up on the cutting room floor. I picked it back up again because I think it's something that that you guys need to know about. So there was a Wall Street economist in the New York Post. This story comes from the New York Post. And this Wall Street economist first started ripping President Trump's tariffs earlier this year. Well, Torsten Slack, or Sloak, I'm not exactly sure what the O with the slash actually is pronounced as, but he is a chief economist at an investment giant called Apollo Global Management. And when he started talking about this, he actually has come up with an analysis that he posted that basically says that, hey, you know what? The administration's approach on this, might actually have a more strategic positioning than previously thought. And he actually sees that there is a potential where even lowering some of the tariffs on some of the U.S. trading partners is still going to potentially boost revenue, federal revenue, to the tune of something around $400 billion, he said. Now, back in April, this guy warned that Trump's tariffs could trigger a recession by summer. He was saying that it was going to particularly harm American small businesses and potentially halt the flow of goods from China into the U.S. However, this time around, he's like, one potential move that could be possible is to keep the 30% tariffs on the Chinese imports, impose 10% tariffs on all the other countries, offering them a potential 12-month window to reduce non-tariff barriers and liberalize the trade access. And he's like, extending the deadline 1 year would give countries and U.S. domestic businesses time to adjust to the new world with the permanently higher tariffs. And it would also change the immediate decline in uncertainty because then everybody would kind of know what the playbook is. And he's like, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. And then he went and continued and says, hey, beyond calming some of these volatile markets about all this, he's like, doing this in this fashion, meaning the 30% on China and 10% on everybody else, could actually deliver an estimate of $400 billion in annual tax revenue. And that figure could help offset some of the budget deficits without actually raising taxes. So this guy, outside of like standing up and going, yeah, he was such a on all these tariffs, hey, maybe he's onto something. It's like he got pissed off, had time to walk around and sort of cool off his jets and everything, and then he started thinking about it, and he's like, maybe Trump's kind of onto something. And it's really interesting to see that there are a lot of people, a lot of Democrats who are starting to, former, I'm going to call them moderates because let's face it, I mean, the Democrat Party isn't really full of any moderates anymore. But there's a lot of them who are starting to go, maybe Trump really isn't all that bad in all of this. Yeah. And he wrote in his analysis, quote, this would seem like a victory for the world and yet would produce $400 billion of annual tax revenue for U.S. taxpayers. Trade partners will be happy with only 10% tariffs, and the U.S. tax revenue will go up. And then he says in a final sentence, maybe the administration has outsmarted all of us. So I guess maybe if you Democrats would quit your jaw jacking and actually get on board with watching what's happening, you might actually find out that Trump really is doing things for America. Anyway, honestly, realistically, they don't care. And most of the time, that's because they lie. They lie all the time. They lie to you even when they're lying to you. They lie. They lie, they lie, they lie. And who am I talking about? Yes, I am talking about those Democrats. I mean, we've seen like Jasmine Crockett as an example. She has talked about how she is, from the streets and so on and so forth. Yet there's video evidence, and I've even showed it to you. There's video evidence who basically have essentially shown that she does know how to speak quite eloquently, and not her I'm going to call it ghetto type language that she's used. Okay. And another person who lies, and lies often, is AOC. Well, apparently somebody somewhere went and pulled up her high school yearbook photo. Yeah. Take a look at this. There's her high school yearbook photo. This is her graduating photo by the poster, or by the claim. And it shows that she graduated from a suburban Yorktown high school in 2007. And she graduated as Sandy Cortez, according to Matt Slater. Now, she always claims, by the way, AOC always claims that she comes from the Bronx. In fact, she and Donald Trump got into it in the public sphere about the fact that, she's from the Bronx and she eats Queens boys for lunch or whatever. Except there's only one problem. She apparently didn't spend all of her life in the Bronx. Yeah. She said, or she has consistently stated that she is, from the Bronx and so on and so forth. But she actually grew up in the suburbs, in particular at this Yorktown. Here's a picture on the screen right now. This is a picture of her home, reportedly, where she grew up. She was reportedly moved from the Bronx out into the suburbs while she was young. And by that, I mean something in the realm of like 5 to 7 years old, and spent most of her time out there. Yeah. So, yeah, here's her quote. She was like, "I'm also a Bronx girl. You should know that we can eat Queens boys for breakfast, respectfully," he said, in a reference to the president's Queens childhood, because President Trump grew up in Queens. But she was born in the Bronx, yes. But her family moved to Yorktown into the suburbs when she was 5 years old, and she went on to graduate from Yorktown High School in 2007. Yeah. So, anyway, these people, they are so fake. I mean, let's just face it, okay? Politicians in general are fake. But when you add the word Democrat or the big D to their back of their name, they become even more fake. Like, totally fake. And, they have to play. I mean, we've seen this. Clinton, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, even Shifty Schiff. They all lie, and they're all fake. Every single one of them. So how anybody can believe them and vote for them is totally beyond me. I don't get it. I honestly do not understand all of that, realistically. Let's see here. Oh yeah, MacGyver is another one. Yep. So I just don't understand how anybody could do this. Oh, by the way, side note. Well, let me go ahead and do this real quick. Let me do this spot. This is one of my nice spots that I like. You wake up in the morning, you drink coffee. I have a big 16-ounce cup, 2 cups in one. Got to get that coffee in the morning. Well, you need to check out 1775 Coffee if you haven't tried it yet. Now they have a fantastic offer that you can try all of their items, plus you can pick up a couple of other things. The 1775 starter kit just dropped. They have a small number of units available. They only have 1,000 units, they claim. Don't know how many of those are left. But in this 1775 starter kit, you're going to be getting a bold dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check. You're going to get a smooth medium roast, and you're also going to get to try their Vitality Mushroom Coffee that gives you clean energy and laser focus with no crash at the end of it. All of them are single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also going to get my personal favorite, the gold spoon clip, because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. You're going to get a frother that's strong enough to stir up your coffee, as well as your mother-in-law's political opinions. Hopefully she's on your side. And a 1775 black tumbler that says, I don't take life advice or caffeine from a woke sea witch. $175. $170. I keep wanting to say 175. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, all yours for just $99. This is for the ones who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com. That is the number 1, the number 7, the number 7, the number 5, coffee, all one word, .com /studio. And that's the question mark key again. So 1775coffee.com /studio, STUDIO. Grab your starter kit at that site. Go to 1775coffee.com /studio and pick up your starter kit. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. Once again, go to 1775coffee.com /studio and grab your starter kit before they are gone. All right. Well, you'll recall last week I kind of made a comment about, it's possible that Harris is like thinking about a run for governor. Well, apparently, even in Politico, Politico is saying that, yeah, Democrat donors are just not enthused about that. They really aren't. So, top Democrat donors, who are, of course, still recovering from the fact that she failed. One unnamed six-figure California donor in the report that was shared with Politico said that Kamala just reminds you we are in this complete shitstorm. With Biden, we got bamboozled. I think she did the best she could do in that situation, but obviously she knew about the cognitive decline too. Oh boy, so even they're starting to believe in the cognitive decline. The guy also added, I've written so many checks because I knew the Trump administration would be horrible, but we're living in a nightmare because of the Democrats. I'm furious at them, truly. No, you're not living in a nightmare. What you are living in is a America that is coming back from the nightmare. Anyway, others said on the record to the influential left-leaning news outlet, Politico, that what seemed like a good idea at first was now being questioned. Mather Martin, who is a San Francisco-based fundraiser who has worked the Harris campaign, said there was more enthusiasm at first. I think it waned a bit. So clearly according to the interviews, the former vice president's role in asserting President Joe Biden's mental fitness in the latter years of his presidency is actually causing or weighing on the minds of many of these folks. And of course, Harris has yet to answer for that. Even former Democrat Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villagrosa is criticizing Harris, as well as the former Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra. They're both tearing into both of those together. So, anyway. They're still reeling. They're trying to figure out what the heck happened. And they're not going to be all that willing to go back to Harris, I don't. Back to Harris, I don't think. As much as they want to. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. Once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you search for the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to hit those thumbs up or the thumbs down if you really want to on all of my platforms, whether it is X, YouTube, Rumble, and, of course, Facebook. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.